Vegan to save our Earth? Look no further.
Our programs offer many languages. Please visit suprememastertv.com/schedule.
Weather extremes once considered rare or unprecedented are becoming more common. Severe heat waves that happened only once every 50 years are now happening roughly once a decade. Tropical cyclones are getting stronger, and most land areas are seeing more rain or snowfall in a year. Severe droughts are happening 1.7 times as often, and fire seasons are getting longer and more intense.
Climate change and the increasing frequency of worldwide disasters. Part 1 of 3. Continue watching to find out more.
Mushabziaka means hello in Abkhaz. I'm Nino. The people of the Republic of Abkhazia thank you for your wise decision to adopt the vegan diet to help save our precious planet. Welcome to part 1 of our 3-part series, Climate Change and the Increasing Frequency of Worldwide Disasters. Over the past year, both the number and intensity of weather-related disasters have drastically increased around the globe, with scientific experts agreeing that climate change is the cause. These highly qualified scientists also agree that we are at a critical decision point where we either radically reduce greenhouse gas emissions or face imminent disaster. On August 9, 2021, the United Nations Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, or IPCC, released its 6th Assessment Report, or AR6. Drawing on more than 14,000 scientific studies, the IPCC report provides a detailed picture of how climate change is altering our world. A press release from Reuters explains.
The UN Climate Panel has released its most comprehensive assessment of climate change yet.
Climate change is a fact. It's already happening. It's, no matter what, not going to go away.
The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change report sounded a dire warning. The world is dangerously close to runaway warming, and greenhouse gas levels are high enough to guarantee climate disruption for decades. Here are some of the report's main takeaways. Humans are to blame, full stop. The first line of the report reads, "It is unequivocal that human influence has warmed the atmosphere, ocean and land."
UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres described the report as a code red for humanity, stating, "The alarm bells are deafening." The AR6 report concludes that unless immediate actions are taken to reduce emissions, average global temperatures could reach the extremely dangerous threshold of 1.5 degrees Celsius warming within 20 years.
Even the severest of cuts are unlikely to prevent global warming of 1.5 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial temperatures. But without immediate steep emissions cuts, average temperatures could cruise past 2 degrees Celsius by the end of the 21st century. Weather extremes once considered rare or unprecedented are becoming more common. Severe heat waves that happened only once every 50 years are now happening roughly once a decade. Tropical cyclones are getting stronger, and most land areas are seeing more rain or snowfall in a year. Severe droughts are happening 1.7 times as often, and fire seasons are getting longer and more intense.
In this series, we'll look at how global warming is creating increasingly devastating weather-related disasters on Earth at an ever-increasing rate. The year 2020 was the hottest year ever recorded. Many parts of Europe and Asia, including France, northern Portugal, Spain, Russia, and southeastern Russia, recorded their highest temperatures, and the heat reached all the way to the Antarctic, where Esperanza Base, at the tip of the Antarctic Peninsula, set a new all-time record high temperature of 18.4 degrees Celsius on February 6, 2020. However, many of these records were smashed again in 2021 as global temperatures soared even higher. As Earth's temperatures rise, the number of floods also increase. Between late June 2021 and early August 2021, an unprecedented number of floods occurred around the world. Why is this happening? Increased temperatures have a significant effect on rainfall. As temperatures rise, the atmosphere can hold more water vapor. Research shows that for every 1 degree Celsius rise in temperature, the atmosphere can hold 7% more moisture. Thus, when the rains come, they are much heavier and more likely to cause flooding than in the past. Let's look at some of the disastrous floods that occurred around the globe between June and August 2021. In mid-July 2021, a devastating flood occurred in western Germany, where more than 182 millimeters or 7.2 inches of rain fell in just 72 hours. Authorities sent fire crews and helicopters to rescue people from balconies and rooftops where they had taken refuge. The two worst hit states were Rhineland-Palatinate and North Rhine-Westphalia, with neighboring Baden-Württemberg also severely damaged. Some 114,000 households lost both power and communications as power and mobile phone networks collapsed. Cars were upended in the flooded streets. Hundreds of people died and thousands more were left homeless. Nursing homes were evacuated and hospitals were filled to capacity. 20 of the 35 bridges along the River Ahr, a tributary of the Rhine, were destroyed. Pictures from the region, one of the most prosperous in Europe, showed almost unimaginable devastation. Near Frankfurt, an entire house was carried down the River Ahr. Belgium, Luxembourg, and the Netherlands also suffered extensive flooding, and thousands of residents in the Netherlands were urged to evacuate their homes. Meanwhile, in China, between mid-July and early August, 2 major floods occurred. In mid-July, a massive storm in Henan province in central China produced a year's worth of rain in just 72 hours. The resulting floodwaters killed dozens of people, mostly in the provincial capital of Zhengzhou, and displaced more than 1 million others, creating 617.1 millimeters or 24.3 inches of precipitation. It was the worst rainstorm ever recorded, with 19 state weather monitoring stations registering the highest daily rainfall in their history. Drivers were trapped in underground tunnels and had to crawl over submerged cars to escape. Video footage showed hundreds of helpless passengers trapped in subway cars, crying for help as floodwaters rushed in. Tragically, more than a dozen people drowned. In one area of the city, residents worked desperately, using ropes to rescue people trapped in an underground mall. In other areas, residents held hands to avoid being swept away by the current as they struggled through rushing water. The heavy rains caused power outages across the city, and one hospital, housing nearly 10,000 patients, faced a complete blackout. In Xinxiang, a small city north of Zhengzhou, 812 millimeters or 32 inches of rain fell within 3 days, shattering all local meteorological records. Over 55,000 hectares of crops were destroyed by the floodwaters. Chinese media referred to the Zhengzhou flood as something unseen in 1,000 years. It was estimated that 13 million people were affected. Welcome back to our program as we continue to look at recent floods around the world. In early August 2021, only weeks after the devastating flood in central China, heavy rains fell in the southwestern province of Sichuan. More than 80,000 people were evacuated and 440,000 others in 6 cities across the province were affected. Water levels in the major rivers rose above warning levels, and one reservoir in the city of Dazhou was in danger of overflowing. Zhao Qingchen, vice director of the State National Climate Center, said, "Extreme events such as high temperatures and heavy rainfall have increased, and the level of climate risk in China is on the rise." In London, England, torrential rains flooded roads and subways in July 2021 as more than 48.5 millimeters or 1.9 inches of rain in 1 hour poured over the city. Some residents waited in their homes in waist-high water until emergency services could rescue them. Officials stated that the massive storm was caused by the recent heat wave in Britain. Also in July 2021, in India's western state of Maharashtra, at least 180 people died when torrential rains flooded low-lying areas and caused numerous landslides. In Taliye, 180 kilometers southeast of Mumbai, dozens of people perished when a massive landslide flattened much of the village. Throughout Maharashtra, more than 200,000 residents were evacuated as the Randanagari Dam overflowed and the Panchganga River flooded nearby low-lying areas. Authorities asked stranded residents to stand on rooftops so rescuers in helicopters could see them. In parts of the state, up to 594 millimeters or 23 inches of precipitation fell in just 24 hours, the heaviest rainfall in many decades. In other parts of India, heavy rains triggered numerous massive landslides. In the Samaur district of the country's Himachal Pradesh, a terrifying landslide destroyed a large stretch of road as mud, trees, and debris slid down the side of a mountain. In Japan, several people were killed in July 2021 after heavy rains around the central city of Atami in Shizuoka triggered landslides. A terrifying river of mud swept through the streets of Atami, killing several people and destroying more than 130 homes. And these are only some of the many floods and resulting landslides that occurred around the world between June and early August 2021. Several states in the USA, as well as New Zealand, Australia, Brazil, Crimea, southern Russia, Formosa or Taiwan, and more, all experienced unprecedented flooding and widespread destruction. In many cases, the amount of precipitation broke all previous records. How can we stop this massive devastation? Our most gracious Supreme Master Ching Hai has spoken many times about the extreme dangers of climate change. Quoting scientific evidence, she explains that raising livestock is the primary cause of global warming, and that the only way to halt its occurrence is through worldwide adoption of the vegan lifestyle. She also warns that we are in imminent danger and must change our ways quickly.
There's so many things in this world, and many places are so damaged, and ongoing kind of disasters. Typhoon and floods, and I don't know if we have ever had so many disasters like this before. I don't think so. And they still cling to that bloody, dripping, bleeding piece of meat in their mouth and call that food. Don't even care if anybody else dying around them or children suffer. And poverty and everything everywhere.
We're deeply grateful to Supreme Master Ching Hai for explaining how to halt climate change through adoption of the compassionate vegan lifestyle. We pray that our shared dream for a vegan world will soon come true. Sensible viewers, thank you for your company today. Please join us again on August 24th for part 2 of this series. Coming up next is Be Your Children's Best Friend, part 1 of 6 on Between Master and Disciples. May all disasters and pandemics soon come to an end as people around the world become vegan.
Vegan, Way of the Benevolent.
Our programs offer many languages. Please visit suprememastertv.com/schedule and suprememastertv.com/PE.
Nos programmes offrent plusieurs langues. Veuillez visiter suprememastertv.com/schedule et suprememastertv.com/PE.
Nuestros programas ofrecen varios idiomas. Visiten suprememastertv.com/schedule y suprememastertv.com/PE.
저희 방송은 다양한 언어를 제공합니다. 다음을 참고하세요. suprememastertv.com/schedule
그리고 suprememastertv.com/PE